Just before we get started, right, I just wanted to tell you that I've got a new series that's now available called Truth Seeking. That's TROOF. There's a link to it in the link tree below. It's me and a comedian from the UK called Jimmy Budd just discussing various conspiracy theories. We'd love to know what you think about it. We'd love to know that there's people listening. Alright, guys. I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. And now, this week was planned before the big news that hit us this week, so don't think that I've just run out of ideas and started theming my shows on the week's news. I've wanted to cover these for a while, and they're probably something that we'll talk about again in the future, because I like to try and see how it all links together in it for us. We'll at least reference them anyway. And I know that it's week 33, and I'm going to apologise now that this week isn't this episode 33. Isn't on the Freemasons, which is a really big shame because that's a massive Masonic number and it's an oversight on my part. So I'm not sure when we'll do that. Maybe in the long distant future. I don't know if I'm still doing this in the long distant future. If I haven't either driven myself mental or bored the shit out of you lot. But as I say, not time for Freemasonry just yet. And I'm always going on about these guys' his counterparts, and not the Freemasons' counterparts. I don't know what that would be, but the negative counterparts to these guys. So it's only fair that I give these guys a little bit of time in the limelight. So, in case if you're listening to this on demand on Threshold FM, and you've clicked it by mistake, or you've maybe got a sight impediment, or you maybe very very short-term memory issues. Or simply, you've not seen a notification come up and you're busy working on something in your workshop or something, This week, I'm going to be teaching you stuff that I could find out about angels. So, most people seem to view these creatures as some sort of protector, like big white wings and halos around the top of their heads, beautiful singing voices like a siren, or those things that we learnt about in Truth Seeking on Thursday with Jimmy Budd last Thursday. In the Sweden episode, there was those naked men that hang around in rivers and ponds and that. They can sing, so possibly they could be angelic. But anyway, the other angels are seen to have the odd harp, and they're always associated with some form of deity in it, like a Christian god. But then again, there's also one in charge of hell. So just like us, they seem to be capable of error to some degree. They're not infallible. If that's It's either infallible or infallible or ineffable. Infallible, I think. But did you know that all of these depictions of angels are pure fabrications, just fucking made up by people? Completely made up, just nonsense. Because the real angels are more like something that you'd see late on in a series of Digimon, as compared to something that you'd wished, rather than something that you'd associate with like a church window or something that you'd expect to be wishing goodwill to all men. They don't really look like people as such. But we'll get into that. We're going to start at the bottom. And I always try to throw in, a little bit of etymology. There is a phrase as well this week that we can have a quick think about. And that's, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. And I reckon that's got links to the natural vibrations of the planet, like what Michael Tallinger lectures about. What if the so-called angels are actually a sort of metaphor for aliens, or even maybe an alien spacecraft, and they're using the natural resources of the Earth, the so-called quote-unquote vibrations, to refuel their ship, or maybe to gain enough experience or level up, or enough food to sort of strengthen themselves up as beings, if that makes sense. So maybe not the vibrations of the oil, but maybe that negative energy that we keep learning about, that that the hyenas were supposedly eating in The Lion King. And if it doesn't make sense, what I'm saying at the minute, I'm guessing that you didn't know that angels are said to evolve. That's why I'm saying level up and get experience, and that they're supposed to evolve from one form to another. But it seems to be more Pokemon rules rather than the aforementioned Digimon rules. So that's to say that they only go in one direction, like they can't devolve and go backwards and become smaller and less strong, or whatever you would describe them as. I don't really know if you would describe I think it was the Ophanim. They don't sound like they'd be strong, but I'm guessing they are, because they're the highest level of angel. Anyway, to a degree, from our point of view and understanding of the world, or at least my own understanding of the world. I can't speak for the listeners of Threshold FM, but I'd argue that when they reach the pinnacle of like Altered Angel anatomy, that it seems to be like a weird step down from what they were. So, but you'll see what I mean when we get to them. You will understand, hopefully. There's a part of me though. There is a part of me that thinks most of that's probably just down to them being somewhat unfathomable, if you like, from our point of view, in their requirements for what their requirements of life would be. So I can imagine that the first two classes of angels sort of sitting down to eat a bowl of noodles in it because they're relatively human-ish or animalistic, or just fucking floating stationary in the sky having a quick cig. Maybe even the third rung of angel at a push, maybe. But that top class of angel, they offer him, that's baffling me. Anyway, we'll start where any good striptease starts, I guess, and we'll start at the feet. The bottom of the angelic ladder of ascension, with what's known as the cherubim, spelt as the cherubim, but pronounced as the cherubim. And I know it's definitely a hard K at the start, CH, but it's a hard K, and I'm probably again ruining that with my accent. But anyway, let's get into angels. Most of you're probably hearing cherub in cherubim, and thinking you already know all about the naked babies with wings and ranged weaponry. But you'd be wrong, mate, because these depictions of Cupid-like creatures that we call Cupid are actually just depictions of Cupid himself, which was like a Greek or a fucking Roman god that was co-opted or shoehorned, let's say it was shoehorned into Christianity, possibly to make the sort of forced conversions more palatable to the invaded nations. And also, maybe, the keen etymologist amongst you have picked up on how cherub can sometimes also mean ox, which I didn't know. But, maybe if you're listening to this going, I like me words, apparently cherub can mean ox, which, for those of you that, aren't overly keen on, animals, it's a type of cow. And to think it is an ox, that would mean that you're much closer than a guess to what one of these cherubim are, as compared to all these fucking know-it-all baby chasers. And that's because the cherubim are actually part ox themselves. They're also part eagle, part person, part lion. And that makes me wonder if that's what the Wizard of Oz was actually about, in secret and that, behind the scenes, ironically, behind the curtain, if you like. Because it's about a nation of small people called munchkins, they're in it, but there could be some form of artistic depiction of how these creatures have been drip-fed into the mainstream, whilst the story itself is about a human, a lion, a tin man, and a scarecrow. So I'll explain what I mean by that, innit, because I know that might be a bit hard to grasp as why have I brought the Wizard of Oz into this. So the human aspect of the cherubim is the girl. Was she called Ruby? I think in the Wizard of Oz, the little girl that gets abducted by the fucking tornado, which could probably be a tractor beam. Regardless, I think she was called Ruby. There was something about Ruby in that anyway. And then you've got the lion part of the cherubim, which is the lion in the fucking Wizard of Oz. The scarecrow, turns out it was a bit of a miscommunication, and that was supposed to be a scared cow. So, they couldn't be too obvious, too blatant with it, and obviously that's the ox, and obviously then you've got the Tin Man being the eagle, because as we've learnt over the past 5 or so years, but maybe always secretly known, birds are robots, or more specifically drones, as they're fucking capable of flight. And the cherubim are also capable of flight because they've got 4 wings each, like a dragonfly almost, but strangely in the body don't resemble a dragonfly or dragon at all in appearance. Also, as well, with the Wizard of Oz, fucking spoiler alert, it's all about how all of life is an illusion, and it's also about this other world as well that seems to run parallel with ours, which is what a lot of angel lore seems to touch on too. A film that I don't know where I got family from. A film that I used for research this week, though, for this week's show. You've probably all seen it, innit? It's Dogma by one of Kevin Smith's View Askewniverse films, with Jay and Silent Bob and that, which, spoiler alert again, ends in the death of some angels. And I really had the word spoiler stuck in my head because one of the ranks of angel is also called spoiler, or spoilers by some people. Like in Dogma, I think it was Loki was the angel of death, which is also kind of known as a spoiler in certain religious circles from me readings and that. Anyway, back to cherubims. I think it's worth mentioning that the Catholic depiction is the naked babies, which in older European religions were the gods of erotic love as well, so it's weird to think that many Catholic priests could be raping the kiddies in order to appease some form of perverted heavenly being, or maybe they choose to just take it quite literally. I'm not too sure in it. I'm not a priest, but I'm not gonna dwell on the kiddly diddling. Just whereas, you know, I mean, this isn't truth seeking. This is pause for thought. You know, not to say, you know, oh, this has got a bit more class. It definitely doesn't, but we'll keep the kiddie diddling stuff to the Thursday. So, you won't be surprised, though, to learn that another historical depiction of the cherubim are animal-human hybrids, centaur-like creatures, griffin-like monsters such as the Ieyasu of fucking ancient Mesopotamia. So there we've got ancient Mesopotamia in this week already, and we're only on the first class of angel, which adds to the idea as well of angels actually being aliens, but I can't quite work out whether they were more reptilian, mantid, grey or tall whites. I don't know where them 4 classes of alien would fit into this. Well, I mean, then again though, maybe the reptilians though, because they're kind of animal-human hybridish, and the mantids because they kind of look like bugs crossed with humans, but the greys don't look so much like a hybrid, and realistically neither do the tall whites, do they really? But though, if we do cross-examine the cherubim and we take the small humanoid aspects of them and the animal hybrid factors, that could explain the Loveland frogmen of Ohio, which I don't know if I've gone on about them before, and maybe at a push the Tuscumbian space penguins, which are 2 pretty cool aliens. Like, go and have a little Google of them now. Though, like, both of these creatures in it seem to always be detailed as wearing clothes. The Tuscumbian space penguins were in like a fucking possible gas mask kind of thing, whilst the frogmen were apparently in loose-fitting denim trousers. So, could it be that the cherubim operate on similar rules to the Amish? Maybe they're allowed to be in our world to see if, you know, if they like it, if they enjoy it, and if they want to stay here, they can stay here, it's fine. But maybe they lose their abilities, whatever their abilities may be, and their access as well to, obviously that means to like spacecraft or the portals through the fabric of space and time that they might be using. Maybe when they say that they want to experience this plane of existence, they lose their angelic life completely, you know, and come back as human children. Maybe they're not born though by like human women like Jesus was supposed to be born. We'll get into him later, but maybe the spirit of the Tuscumbian space penguins are able to inhabit the bodies of our children. Could that be why priests fuck kids? Are they in cahoots with the angels, or are they trying to expel the angels? Could this also explain why they used to drug and rape people for MK Ultra to be successful? Maybe it creates a bit of room inside the person. I mean, not literally, like, because it's easier to argue that a space is being filled maybe a little bit more and then possibly a little bit less and then a little bit more again. But more in the sense of splitting the people's psyches and allowing these spiritual angelic creatures, maybe we've just learned to call them demons because everything around them is evil. Like, all of the things they do we perceive as bad. But I'd argue that the more people know about angels than they do about demons, innit? So what if we've always called these creatures demons or demonic, but through a misinformation campaign by, be it Christianity or the Catholic Church or whatever you want to, you know, pin it down on, we've begun to call these very creatures angels in order to alter public perception, and maybe that's why the cherubim are now depicted as infantile humans rather than as fucking demonic 4-winged beasts. I've also got to wonder, another little bit of etymology for you guys, is that where we get the term foreheads from, you know, as in the bit of, you know, like the, not like as in 4 as in the number, I mean like the bit of the head that you use to headbutt someone, you know, the FOR, but I mean it's pronounced the same, innit? Like a synonym, I think. And, you know, so is that where we get that from? And I mean, on top of this, you know, they also sound fucking terrifying, like humanish form. Like, I've not even fucking described what they look like, have I? I've said all of this. I've said, oh, they're not actually the babies with wings, but I've not told you what they look like. So they've got like a human-like form, as in like they stand on the 2 legs, the bipedal. They've got 4 wings each. legs like goats with hooves for feet, human hands, bronze skin and wings, the I've got to say the stunning ability to fly without beating the wings, and the ability to also pass balls like huge balls of electricity amongst themselves in the sky while simultaneously shooting lightning when they slap the balls back and forth like the most exciting game of tennis doubles you've ever seen. Now, that's all according to Ezekiel chapter 1, at least in the Old Testament. But later in Ezekiel chapter 41, he also claims that they had two faces in it, that of a lion and of a man. So what if they can fracture and split up to achieve different tasks around the world? What if that could be what happened? And it like fuck me, mate. What if that's why it's a task force? Is that another alteration made by the human language, an inversion possibly, and instead of force with a force with a CE, like a symbol for a copywriter thing or a Jedi, it's actually force with an S and a U. I mean, getting a bit carried away, but I mean, we may never know. To be honest, I don't think it's something that we might not ever find out, but I do know what it's time for. It's time for a brand new segment for the show. A possible fan favourite of the future, and not to be too topical, but I said, this week marked the death of DMX and Prince Philip, and I thought that to mark the occasion, I'd test out this new segment called, "Oh my God, that sounds awful." So here it is. Oh my God, that sounds awful. Yeah, then. So what did you think of that? Let us know in the Discord, a lovely little Threshold.fm exclusive there for us. Now, I'm not sure if we'll have another in the future. I mean, it took me fucking ages, and I'm back at work now, innit? My studio's back open, so I don't know if I really want to give up time from skinning rats to fucking mesh two songs together, especially if I'm going to do it so poorly. I don't know what I'm doing. But I thought it might be interesting to give it a go and see if it's something that I could slowly get better at over time, completely, sort of over time learn how to completely change the songs into new songs by changing the sort of meaning of them and moving the words around. But anyway, I don't know what you think. It's probably awful. If you want it for the playlist, it can be available for the playlist. It's not a problem. Anyway, I think I may have not been entirely honest so far as well. Not in general, I've not been conning you, so just mean with the angels. After a fair bit of research, I learnt that the cherubim aren't always considered to actually be angels, but a lot of people consider them to be angels, so I'm including them within this. And, well, they are kind of angels, but it's hard to explain, man. I read stuff about it, and I'm trying to summarise it in a fucking sentence, so... I'm looking at them like frogs. Like angels are frogs. Imagine an angel is a frog, right? So a tadpole is still a frog, but it's also not a frog, if that makes sense. Or a caterpillar into a moth kind of thing. Or a fucking egg, like an egg. An egg is a chicken, and it'll have the potential to be a chicken, but it might never become a chicken. It'll always be an egg. Whereas a tadpole, I guess, is always going to grow to be a frog if it's left alone. So I don't know how they sort of do quite evolve. That wasn't made clear anywhere. I mean, if you can find it, I'll happily have a look at that. But either way, everyone seems to agree that the spiritual beings of some description and that they were created by God, whoever or whatever that turns out to be. Either fucking Anu's children, fucking Enki and Enlil, or literally fucking Yahweh. And there is one other point everyone seems to agree on as well. Even in ancient cultures and religions that haven't been founded on Christianity or the Old Testament and haven't touched on that at all. For example, again, to revert to last week's show about Sweden, for truth seeking, I noticed that the Sami people of Sweden, they've got a similar belief, though it's not exactly the same, it's not identical in it, but everyone around the world, it seems, at some point at least, to believe that the cherubim are some sort of protector. More specifically towards Christianity ways and people that use the Old Testament, the gatekeepers of dimensions, or the doorway to the Garden of Eden, if you like. For when Adam and Eve got done and kicked out for introducing the idea of 5 a day to everyone. something, I guess, like that. That's the closest we could probably get to people agreeing about what they were. Anyway, next in the hierarchy of angels, we've got I guess what you'd call middle management, more widely known as the Malak, or the Malach, but I think it's the Malak, because it's KH at the end, MALAKH, which, from what I've been reading, they're the humanoid-looking angels, the ones that get depicted in church windows and shoved up the top of a Christmas tree. And going back to Dogma again, I think that Metatron would class as a Malak, if you like, because even though Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's characters, Loki and Bartleby, in that they're angels, but they're not proper angels at the minute because they've been sort of cast away but not denied their ability to be angels. So I think Metatron is the best example in that film of a Malak. And Metatron is said to be the one who takes the voice of God and spreads it around to the humans. So possibly just a gossiper, like someone who owns a fucking fruit and veg shop, but it seems like the most likely neutral in the eyes of good and evil, if you like, because they're literally just God's messenger. And I can't help but wonder, though, if this makes Transformers a sort of psyops or potentially maybe bigoted. I don't know if they would go that far, but maybe a psyops of some sort, because and it might seem hacky as well for the listener, even you listening, for me to try and relate Megatron and Metatron to one another, but if one is an evil shape-shifting alien and the other is a divine heavenly being, it seems a bit odd to have them so close to each other name-wise. And especially when people say, Hollywood's ran by the devil and all this sort of stuff. So is the devil running these films and the comics and stuff and the cartoons in order to muddy the waters, if you like, But I mean, saying that, that's a difficult thing to say, really, because like the words otter and other, they've got one letter difference between them, and I'm not suspicious of those fucking massive wet weasels being secret alternatives, Other examples of words that are one letter away from each other are fucking house and mouse, and they're very different things, like notably different things. But I guess that's the first letter in it. It's not like because realistically, Megatron and Metatron, in my accent, sounds very, very similar, and it could just be my accent that blurs the lines slightly, somewhat between Megatron the alien and Metatron the angel. I just think it's a bit suspicious. That's all. Anyway, Malak seem to be out of them all so far, like from what I've gone off anyway, they seem to be believed to be the equivalent of a guardian angel too. So that's like a being that constantly watches over any and all people, possibly helping them avoid a bit of ivy in their lives, Interestingly as well, I mentioned him near the top of the show, Jesus was thought to be an angel until they later compiled the stories of Christianity into one easy-to-read fucking tell-all biography aimed at the masses. So it kind of makes sense that a lot of other religions said to have stemmed from the time of what I think was referred to as, was it the 5 tribes, believing that Jesus was a prophet of some sort of messenger of God rather than God itself in human form. So I found that quite interesting, innit? Because that seems fucking, it makes it kind of plausible when you know that the Bible itself was supposedly rewritten to keep fit into society as whatever fucking civilization it was a part of was growing or shrinking and taking on new people. So that does kind of make sense there. I was also wondering as well if this explains the crucifixion at all, because could it have been that something that's been altered, like rather than it being on like a wooden cross kind of thing, or some part of it, maybe it's not as literal as what we think it is. Like maybe it's just been changed so that it helps in the sale of palm leaves at Easter time, and later down, palm leaves has probably died out again, But then again, when I was a kid, you'd get given a palm leaf at church and be like, yeah, this is dried palm leaf, rip it apart, make a crucifix. And we'd have to do that like 2 weeks out of the year before Easter. But also, they could have altered it as well if they're all connected. They could have altered the crucifixion so that they could sell wood to racists further down the historical line. Probably not as far back, well, hopefully not when I was a kid, like not around that time, but you know what I'm getting at. And maybe, they couldn't figure out how to kill Jesus back in the day, so they just nailed his hands to his wings to restrict his movement before, like, bending the nails into it, like, behind his wings to keep his hands there. to like, because they didn't know how, they couldn't kill him because he was an angel. They tried and they just wouldn't work. Maybe he used his hands to heal himself, like he'd heal other people. Maybe he was just a fucking good doctor as well. Maybe let's take for granted he was an angel, right? So let's say he was also a form of doctor, like a medic, and he knew how to heal himself, or he had something in his hand, like a glove or something, like a magical glove or a scientific glove, which he could go, he aim it at his holes on himself or a blind guy's eyes and just go, nyom, nyom, nyom. And that could be where we get the idea for fucking Michael Tallinger's fucking noise that comes from the earth, the vibration of the ring, the vibration of the earth. Maybe that was using that noise to heal himself. Maybe. But anyway, that's why they fucking like bent the nails behind his hands. I've fucking lost myself here, but fucking so by having his hands like fucking nailed into his wings, but that would kind of emulate the shape of a crucifix, and maybe now it was easier to say, like, well, we don't want people knowing he was an angel, so we'll still have him in that shape, but we'll replace his wings with wood. And we'll pretend that we've nailed him to wood instead, and that we've made, and that maybe that's the whole point of making him walk to be crucified, because maybe they'd fucking damaged his wings so that he couldn't fly there. Maybe that was the whole point of that story. And is it the 13 boards in a church that show the fucking, is it the tribulations of Christ or something it's called? Anyway, they might have done, and then he's fucking there, mate, in a crucified shape with his hands bolted to his fucking coach bolted at this point now to his wings. Why not modernise it? We wouldn't use nails now, we'd use coach bolts. We've moved on in technology. And then that's when they were like, right, now we can fucking stab him and that's where they got that magical spear that Hitler was supposed to have been after. And they fucking lunged it into his stomach and that, and he couldn't go nyum 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 like that on himself. All he could do is be like, oh, I wish I could nyom 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 me belly now, so that I could fucking save myself, And then obviously it didn't happen, and he passed out and that, and maybe that would also explain though then, while he was passed out, why they threw him behind a fucking massive rock in a tomb rather than just fucking burning the body or burying the body or leaving it to be fucking scavenged by the local carrion. The seams as well, keeping it biblical for a minute. I mean, most of the episode's fucking biblical, but keeping it related to Jesus for a bit longer, There's some references to like children and Peter, like Jesus' mate, having protection from angels. And there's a story about Peter escaping Nick and the people that knew him thinking it was just his angel at the door, but it was actually Peter himself. Now that makes me think that maybe the angels can also act like the synths in Fallout 4 and replace people either temporarily or permanently, maybe to help them through something difficult, or maybe just to take control, which all adds into the messages that we learnt from The Little Mermaid about children's films being a way to teach extra-dimensional entities how to use their newly acquired human forms. It's weird, isn't it, how it all connects, mate? It's fucking bizarre, man. Now, I'm wondering, right, if the whole good versus evil, heaven versus hell thing is just a human construct. Maybe they're all just entities, no collective good or collective bad. People seem to really just have to have fucking two sides to things, like two options, in order for them to be able to understand that there is something overall. I don't know a good way to explain that, like. But if you give someone two options and there's only two options and you tell them you've got to pick one of them, then they've got to pick one, haven't they? Like, would you rather be stoned to death or would you rather be hanged? They've got to pick one. They probably don't want either. Just like we probably don't want to believe that there's all these good extra-dimensional entities and these bad ones. I don't think it will be that black and white between them. But you could argue, well, I would argue anyway, if a creature is capable of having four faces, then it can't be good or evil, can it? It's got to be capable of at least two separate personalities. Because I mean, if you look at it from a maths point of view, innit, there could be a personality for each face, so straight away that's four personalities. But then combinations of each face being active could equate to a different personality. Meaning there's, I think, 15 possible combinations to make up the necessary personality that would be required. Now, I don't know if there's any numerologist listening, or anyone that can fucking Google, because I never thought of this when I was researching and putting this together. Is there a link between angels and the number 15? Because that would be interesting to find out. I checked the maths on this as well. I triple checked it I'm willing to be wrong if it is 15 combinations, but I did it like by fucking thinking like fucking eagle, lion, man, ox, and then you could have one of them each, and then you could have a combination of each, like 2 each of them, 3 of them, and then all 4 together, which I think is 15. Anyway, you getting fucking bogged down in maths, aren't we? We don't really need to. Like, there's no real need to it. I'm just trying to show you my workings in it for a couple of extra points, really. So I guess we'll just focus on the facts in it. So, like, well, I say the facts, but well, we know that the faces, how many faces they've got. Like, they've got 4 faces. Though as well, you know, like, because they've got the 4 faces, and if all 4 faces are active and each doing something different, maybe they all like fucking project the reality out of each of the faces or something. I'm not sure, but maybe it matters which faces they're facing, which direction they're travelling, because and this ties in before to what I was saying about maybe they could split up to achieve more tasks at once, because it's easy to imagine that they would have like the suitable face facing the creature they're dealing with, if that makes sense. I mean, but this does kind of imply now that there's another existence or a dimension where lions are the dominant species, cats or something, you know, and eagles are the dominant species, and cows are the dominant species, which all that kind of lends itself to South Park, though, which is right on a lot of stuff where, you know, they made out by the aliens that cows were the most intelligent species on the earth, innit, and they left them that machine, I think at the end of the first series or at the start of the end of the first episode, which, you know, would also explain. Well, it doesn't explain much to be cows, but I mean, if you think about it, though, with what I've just said there, it kind of, you could explain the depictions of lions all around the world and the use of eagles as well, all around the world as important symbols, you know, for, I mean, unless these eagles and lions possibly were just like the faces of the human-animal hybrid that resided over those areas, because you could say that, well, I think you can say that the cow is significant in India. I don't know if it is in surrounding countries, but India's pretty big. Whilst, like, the lions have got statues in the UK. Fucking eagles are symbolic of America and Germany, though maybe just Nazi Germany. I'm not sure. I don't know where. I'm not overly sure where people idolise just people though over anything else. I mean, that's something that we're kind of told not to do, innit? By the Bible itself. Like, don't have false gods as such, don't idolise. So maybe that's, again, an inversion. Maybe we should be focusing more on the people rather than focusing on the fucking eagle creatures that are trying to control us, and the lion men that are sneaking into our lives. Anyway, I have fucking not really been looking at my notes, as you can probably tell, so I'm going to bang a song on. And then we'll get into the Seraphim, which is the next level of angel. Now, I haven't heard the original of this, but here's the Montero remix by R.A. the Rugged Man. So, the Seraphim, now, that's the next level of, well, the next so-called level of angel, if you like. I don't actually know if they are, like, in fucking these rungs. I've put them together like this because I think that's how people refer to them, but it gives it a bit of structure, innit? It gives it a bit of a fucking flow, hopefully. Something you can follow. And now this is where they start to get a bit more late stage Digimon, as I say. So now they start to look like kind of like weird angel birdmen, but kind of could look like almost just a fucking a boat in the air, I guess, to a degree. So these ones have got 6 wings each, and they tend to cover their faces and feet with the wings. With 4 of the wings, whilst 2 of the wings are used to fly around, which means it makes it sound like these actually use wings to move, whereas the cherubim had 4 wings, but they didn't move their wings to fly. So it sounds like the seraphim have a bit more weight now, and that they've got to move 2 of the wings to get about. So that's a bit weird. That's in there. I don't get how these are a higher level of angel, but they have to make more effort to move. But maybe they've got better powers or something, I'm not sure. And I don't know. There's less and less about this sort of stuff, about the seraphim in the next class after this. So I don't know why they cover the faces and the feet either. And it's maybe it's because, you know, they know that we wouldn't. Maybe our brains just can't comprehend what they look like. Maybe our brains alter it to make it look like that's what they look like. unless it's just because they're shy. They might just be shy. Like, why can't they be shy? Or they just know about fucking perverts with foot fetishists. Well, fetishes. I think you have a fetish, or you are a fetishist. Regardless. So what we know about them is they're said to be the caretakers of God's throne. But I'm wondering if we look at all of these as though, is it easier to think about these as aliens? And is that what we do throughout history? We're like, we can't comprehend these, are too confusing. Let's turn them into what we now know as fiction at the minute, and turn them into that. And then maybe what we now regard as fiction with aliens and that will be tied into religious law in a couple thousand years, because it'll have dripped down through the ages, and people will be like, well, people have always told stories of these, so we can teach what we want to teach people to be like by using the aliens. Maybe that's what's going on now. I'm not sure, but maybe the throne that they protect, or the accompany, if you like, they take care of. They're the caretakers, aren't they? The janitors of the sky, possibly the sky sweepers. Either way, what if the throne itself is actually like a mothership, and these seraphim are the little ships that fly alongside it to protect it, like gunner ships, I guess. Now, they're often associated with fire and all, which could be them coming through the atmosphere when you think about it, because that adds to the idea of them being the gunner ships as well. So maybe by these entering the atmosphere just ahead of, a certain distance, I guess, but just ahead of the mothership, maybe it reduces the effects of the ozone on the mothership, or the larger so-called throne ship, as it enters the Earth's atmosphere. But that's purely speculation. But it makes sense that if you was to have something that breaks through the atmosphere first, because we see it when spacecraft come in and meteorites come in, don't we? Like, they burn as they come through, it sets on fire and that. So what if you can have something that comes through first, that sets on fire, and does that make like a slipstream in fucking Need for Speed, Is that what they're doing? But instead of it being, there's the go faster spot, here's the sweet spot, it's just the sweet spot in terms of survival and not damaging the paintwork of the spaceship. And right, so etymology wise though as well, we'll break down seraphim. Supposedly the word seraph can translate to burn, but the word seraph with an A rather than an E, as the like SA rather than SE, supposedly means venomous snake in ancient Hebrew, and a load of people seem to assign that to a type of cobra as well. Now, when you then look at stuff to do with ancient Egypt, there was obviously that's a civilization that's fucking obsessed with animal-human hybrids. A cobra at the time was also referred to as a flaming one, not like a fillet steak, but though then again, like, these are like the fucking sort of the kiss your fingers and make the sort of okay symbol to the sky of the chef's kiss. I think that's the name of that, rather than just a weird description for you. And I'm sat here doing it, trying to think, what the fuck's this called? There, it looks like I'm camply pulling a cigarette from my mouth, or like a really long hair from out my throat or behind my teeth. But anyway, maybe the seraphim are like the fucking the chef's kiss of the tippy top, or what we believed at the time of the ancient Egyptians. Maybe we believed they were like the tippy top of the angelic triangle, mate, and that could be why triangles come into everything as well. And that could be why they're called the flaming one, and that's where we get, where I think it's Americans really, and it get flaming yon from for fillet steak, because a fillet steak's the most expensive cut of meat most of the time in a cow. So, and America ties into this again, no, mate. So, particularly, or specifically, if you like, I'd say the Native Americans. I can't remember who it was, but in the Giants episode, we learnt about Quetzalcoatl, who was depicted as a winged snake. Now, cobras, most of the time, according to what I've been seeing and reading and listening to in ancient Egypt, they were regarded and drawn and depicted as winged snakes. Now, that ties Quetzalcoatl into it all, doesn't it? The supposed fella who came and gave corn to the Native Americans, or to the people who were living on that continent, when I assume that continent must have been very different and bigger. Maybe a north and south was all one big block. I'm not sure. But it's weird that these ancient civilizations both have a depiction of winged snakes, And we do as well, though, mate. We do. Like in England, we have winged snakes. We just don't call them that. Maybe again to try and take it away from the idea of all these old stories and be like, no, we don't want them knowing that. Because when we've known that in the past, bad shit's happened. So if we don't know about it, something might not happen. We'll call them dragons, and we'll say that we've killed them all. Because maybe, just as a little side note, that could be what's going on. Now, I know that in all of this so far, there's been a few, what ifs. Like, what if this, what if that, but they're good coincidences, mate. They are, they're good coincidences. And in a way, it ties the idea of the aliens being creatures that help and offer assistance or deliver messages to the people as well, doesn't it? Like, it makes sure that there's some form of positive belief in these entities, rather than being like, oh, there's fucking winged snakes in the sky. Because that's scary, mate. Even like something that's not venomous, like a boa constrictor that can fly, sustain flight. That's horrible. Because imagine if they just started falling out of the sky, mate. Like, if they don't even need to bite you or strangle you, they could just fucking ruin your car. Like 13 foot of fucking pure muscle just dropping out of the ground. It's not worth thinking about, is it? It's nonsensical nightmarishness. So we'll stay away from that. But what I wonder is why does it change so much over the millennia though? Like, it changes, but it stays the same. Like dragons or winged snakes, But it doesn't. It doesn't stay the same though, innit? But it doesn't change. It's neither. It's like a weird state of both. So you've got the whole idea of it's this, but it's that, but it's also this, and it's also that, but it isn't this, and it is that. Which, again, probably doesn't make sense. That's a lot of what ifs, and, maybe this, maybe that. And if I tried to explain this to someone in a pub, like, sat at a bar, or someone tried explaining this to me at a bar, and sat at a pub, I'd probably think they were full of shit, and they'd probably think I was full of shit, but all of these things are actual things that link to all of known history, yet it's not known about. So is that why it feels the same, but it's different because it's just been slightly inverted or altered? What's weird is that in Christianity, though the snake is depicted as evil, whereas like historically it seems reptilian creatures seem to have been held in quite a high regard. But could we be confusing fear and admiration? Maybe the corn was a trap by the angels. Maybe it destroys the earth or changes the atmosphere so that they no longer need the gunner ships to protect them from the fucking atmospheric gases as they enter the earth, and to, not chip off the paintwork of the mothership. Maybe by changing the food sources, people won't live to biblical ages like 700 and something, or, maybe, how, like, Enoch lived to about 360 odd years old before he went to quote unquote join God. Maybe he was abducted by these creatures. Maybe they had a job for him to do. And much like a story that I remember reading a few weeks ago in research about, I think it was a Hindi story or a parable. If they call them parables, I'm sure it was Hindi. For that area of the world, anyway, it was about a guy that disappeared for a day in his own perception, but returned dozens or a few hundred years later to Earth, and loads of stuff had changed. Now, maybe that same fellow was Enoch. Maybe they wanted to torture him, so they removed him from here, but did what they wanted to him in the meantime, and then dropped him back off in a world he didn't recognise. Possibly even to ensure the survival of their own story, because they were like, oh, they're fucking changing it again, mate. They're fucking changing everything. We can't have this. We need him to bring him back, and he can come down. We'll bring him down from the sky. And maybe Enoch was Jesus. I don't know, but maybe that could be what Jesus was. That maybe that's why Jesus was just sucked up back to the sky, why he ascended, and didn't die a second time after he was resurrected. Maybe the story of Enoch is the true story of Noah or Gilgamesh, and instead of him literally saving his family, maybe they removed him from the flood and put him back so that he could spread his DNA about in the same way, saving his family, but not literally saving his family now that we know about DNA. So now that we know about DNA, maybe we can understand more about it. Like, odds are he'd be revered as a god anyway upon his return, or either like a god or like a fucking maniac and completely ignored. And maybe it was the latter though, and that's why we now only live to be about 70 years old. Anyway, let's take a break. That was a lot to take in. I know that. So we'll have a break. If you're enjoying the show, mate, go to my website, www.worldaroundyou.com, and try the books, mate. Try the books. You might enjoy them. There's How to Date an Antique Table, A Lover's Guide, which is a book about how to date an antique table from a lover's perspective. It's got chat-up lines, pick-up lines, fucking dating tips, where to find a nice antique table to bring home, for your mum. Then I've got Uneducated Guesses, which is the first book I ever wrote, which is a load of big words I don't know the meaning to. I just broke them down and tried to work it out and illustrated it. And then we've got the newest book, More You Know, which is a book of fake facts, mate, all illustrated. I think if you've enjoyed this, if you've laughed at any point during this, you'll probably enjoy them. They're about £2.50 on the website, and sometimes they're reduced. Next up, angel-wise, we've got the Ophanim. I think I'm going to go with Ophanim. Also known as the wheels, and apparently there isn't much known about these compared to the other types of angels, so we're getting sort of diminishing returns on our Google searches here, guys. And the last majestic sounding out of all the creatures. Nah, that doesn't make sense. That's not what I mean. I've lost myself. They're not majestic at all. I'm lying to you. They're not majestic. This not intentional. They're not majestic. They're made of two rings in it. So kind of majestic in a way. Like to see that move through the sky would be amazing. But like imagine if you put two elastic bands around a tennis ball to separate the surface of the tennis ball into quarters. Then you remove the tennis ball and somehow the elastic bands stay there, like taut in the shape that they were in. Like they look like that in it, except fucking huge and made of gold and somehow covered in eyeballs. But I'm wondering if these eyeballs are just windows or maybe turrets. Not as in like the towers of castles, because I think they would have known about them, I reckon, in ancient times. But turrets as in mounted weaponry. Maybe they have like a sort of mechanised eyelid over them to protect from the dust and when they're not being used. And maybe that's why they thought they were eyes, because these things were opening and closing as they were like fucking scanning around with guns or possibly cameras. Maybe they look like the fake cameras that they put on the upper deck of a bus. Maybe, But the only thing that I could find out about the purpose of these wheels is that they actually carry God's throne inside them. So maybe they were the mothership I was talking about before. Or possibly just what Anu, the leader of the Anunnaki, if we're going to keep it alien-based, what might be what he used when he came to Earth. And I don't know how it would. Maybe it would land as like two concentric circles, and maybe that's why concentric circles are seen as a big sort of mystical thing, and maybe that's why fucking all the people that died in Jonestown were laid in concentric circles. Maybe they were trying to make a spaceship, but probably not. Seems a bit of a stretch. One quote that I did find was, wherever the spirit went, the wheels went too. But unfortunately, I haven't written down who said that quote or when they said that quote. So I guess it's less of a quote and something that I may or may have not actually read somewhere. And I mean that's as good a place as any really to finish up in it, I guess, because there's not a lot more on the Ophanim, to be honest. I mean, have a look at a picture of one of them. They look pretty mad, to be fair. Like I can't imagine how they would fly, but I can't imagine how the cherubim would fly without moving the wings. So, I mean, they're not birds, they're angels, and even then, they're not really even angels. So, again, you may have come away from this one thinking, I've not really learned anything here, and I can only apologise. And that's probably all we've got time for this week, innit? Now, a little reminder again, a little plug for myself, my shop's back open now, so if you want to buy some dead animals attached to springs or like bobblehead ducklings, maybe a duck lad, stuff I've made out of rat skin and that's you can get that again. The Truth Seeking merch is now available as well. There's a link to that in my link tree if you're interested in getting the Cryptid Currency t-shirt, which it looks pretty good, and I might try and get a couple and try and sell them at markets. And if you've been listening to today's show and thought to yourself, I would love to submit an entry for, oh my God, that sounds awful, then feel free. Otherwise, I'm back tomorrow with Jimmy for Truth Seeking, but until then, you've got HDR tonight at 5 and Jimmy at 7. I'll see you in a bit. Thanks for listening, man. If you enjoyed the show, give it a share online, share it in your Instagram stories from Spotify, send it to a mate, talk about it on social media. Tweet me, mate. Tweet me. When I get 2,000 followers on Twitter, I'll be doing a taxidermy giveaway. So, that's something for you, innit? That's a little something. At World Around You, same as the name of the show. I'll see you in a bit, mate.